I was a 28-year-old graduate student at Columbia University when my life fell apart. My relationship with Sophia had been perfect for 2 years until her 19-year-old sister Amber visited for spring break. One morning after a family dinner where Amber seemed oddly hostile, police knocked on my door. I was accused of sexually assaulting Amber, something I never did. Within days, my life imploded: university, expulsion, job termination, and complete isolation. Only my faith in the truth kept me going. Before I share what happened next, where are you watching from? Hit subscribe and like if you have ever been wrongfully accused of something big or small, because today's story is about how the truth always finds its way to the surface. Before everything fell apart, my life was on an upward trajectory that made me proud. I was in my final year of the engineering graduate program at Columbia University, attending on a merit scholarship I had worked countless sleepless nights to earn. My research assistant position with Dr. Harrison, one of the most respected professors in the field, was opening doors I never thought possible. The stipend helped me maintain my small but decent apartment in Washington Heights, a place that represented every sacrifice and late night I had endured to build something meaningful. Sophia came into my life during my first year of graduate school. I was hunkered down in a campus coffee shop during a brutal January snowstorm, surrounded by textbooks and barely noticing when she asked if she could share my table since the place was packed. 3 hours of conversation later, as the blizzard raged outside, I knew I had found someone special. We bonded over our shared love for documentary films, weekend hiking trips, and ambitious career goals. Over the 2 years we dated, I fell deeper in love with her brilliant mind and kind heart. My immigrant parents adored her, relieved that their only son had found someone who respected our family values while encouraging my ambitions. We talked about marriage after my graduation, just 3 months away when everything happened. I had started researching engagement rings, setting aside a portion of each paycheck in a special savings account. My friend group was small but solid. Marcus from the engineering lab, Jason from my apartment building, and Kyle from undergraduate days formed my core support system. We played basketball on weekends, and they teased me endlessly about being the first to settle down. I thought these friendships were unbreakable. I was wrong about so many things. Meeting Sophia's family had been important to me. Her father, a thoracic surgeon, was intimidating at first, while her mother, an elementary school principal, welcomed me warmly. I made concerted efforts to connect with them, both asking thoughtful questions about her father's work and helping her mother with her gardening projects when we visited. Eventually, they seemed to accept me as a potential permanent addition to their family. But Amber, Sophia's younger sister, remained largely a mystery. Our interactions had been limited to brief holiday gatherings where she seemed preoccupied with her phone. Sophia often mentioned the complicated dynamics between them, how their parents held Sophia to exacting standards, while Amber seemed to escape serious consequences for her actions. There were comments about Amber's tendency to create drama when attention shifted away from her, but I dismissed these as typical sibling rivalry. Nothing prepared me for what would happen during that fateful spring break visit. The night everything changed started innocuously enough. Sophia's parents hosted a family dinner at their suburban home with Amber freshly arrived from her first year at a state college. Throughout the evening, I noticed strange undercurrents. Amber asked pointed questions about my research funding and future prospects, with an edge I had never heard before. When I mentioned our hiking trip planned for the summer, Amber scoffed almost imperceptibly, exchanging a look with her father I could not interpret. After dinner, I offered to help with dishes while Sophia caught up with her mother in the living room. In the kitchen, Amber loaded the dishwasher while I rinsed plates. Our conversation was minimal and strained. At one point, we reached for the same dish, our hands briefly touching. I thought nothing of it. As I turned to leave, Amber whispered something that struck me as odd. "She deserves someone better, you know." Before I could respond, she brushed past me into the dining room, leaving me confused. During our drive home, I mentioned Amber's strange behavior to Sophia. She sighed deeply. "She is just being Amber. She always gets like this when she is home. Do not take it personally." I nodded, letting the subject drop, never imagining that this inconsequential evening would become the fulcrum upon which my entire life would pivot. The next morning, 3 loud knocks on my apartment door jolted me awake. 2 police officers stood in my hallway, faces grim. Vincent Matthews, one asked, checking my ID carefully. We need you to come with us to answer some questions." At the station, the detective's words hit me like physical blows. "We have received a report that you sexually assaulted Amber Williams last night in her parents' kitchen." The room seemed to tilt as I struggled to process what I was hearing. Assault Amber. The brief moment in the kitchen flashed through my mind. Nothing had happened. Absolutely nothing. "There must be some mistake," I stammered. We barely spoke. I was helping with dishes. Sophia was in the next room. The detective's expression remained impassive. "According to the report, you cornered her while she was alone. Miss Williams has provided a detailed statement." My hands trembled as I called Sophia repeatedly after being released. Each call went straight to voicemail. Meanwhile, an email from the university demanded my immediate presence for a meeting with the Student Affairs office the following morning. My heart pounded as I tried again and again to reach Sophia, desperate to make sense of this nightmare. When she finally called back that evening, her voice was unrecognizable, cold and distant. "She told me everything, Vincent." "How could you?" she said, her voice breaking. "Do not call me again. My parents are considering a restraining order." The line went dead before I could respond. The university judicial process moved with terrifying speed. I walked into the Student Affairs office expecting a chance to explain to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. Instead, I found myself before a panel that had seemingly decided my fate before I spoke a single word. The administrator, a woman with glasses perched on the end of her nose, read from a document without making eye contact. "The university has a zero-tolerance policy for sexual assault. Due to the serious nature of the allegations, we are initiating immediate proceedings." I was not permitted to see the evidence against me. When I asked about specific details of the accusation, I was told that sharing such information might re-victimize the survivor. My request to have character witnesses testify on my behalf was denied as irrelevant to the specific incident. The police investigation was ongoing, but the university made it clear their process operated independently from criminal proceedings. My hastily assigned advisor, a junior faculty member who looked uncomfortable throughout our brief meeting, suggested I withdraw voluntarily. "It would avoid having a formal expulsion on your permanent record," he explained, avoiding my gaze. "These proceedings rarely end favorably for the accused." I refused, clinging to the belief that truth would prevail. 3 days later, a Sunday night at 11:30, an email arrived with the subject line, "Notice of Expulsion." By Monday morning, campus security escorted me from Dr. Harrison's laboratory, watching as I packed years of research into a cardboard box. Dr. Harrison, my mentor and strongest academic supporter, requested a private word before I left. In his office, the disappointment in his eyes cut deeper than anger would have. "I respected you, Vincent," he said quietly. "Whatever personal issues you have, I never thought they would compromise your professional judgment or character. Your position is terminated effective immediately." No explanation I offered made any difference. As I gathered my belongings, former colleagues averted their eyes in the hallway. 3 years of research, my intellectual contribution to the field became instantly inaccessible as my university credentials were revoked. My keycard deactivated with a final decisive beep as I exited the building. The professional fallout extended far beyond campus. Industry connections who had previously expressed interest in hiring me after graduation became suddenly too busy to take my calls. 3 scheduled job interviews were canceled without explanation. My LinkedIn profile, once a source of pride, showcasing my accomplishments, filled with abusive messages from strangers who had somehow learned about the allegations. My small savings account dwindled rapidly. The attorney I consulted required a $5,000 retainer just to begin working on my case. Rent was due, and the part-time campus job that had supplemented my stipend was gone. Each morning I checked my bank balance with increasing dread. The social isolation was perhaps the most painful aspect. Marcus and Jason, friends I had trusted, implicitly sent nearly identical text messages expressing shock and promising support. Then came silence. My calls went unanswered, messages unread. I spotted Marcus at a coffee shop once. He saw me, grabbed his laptop, and left immediately. Only Kyle maintained contact, though even he seemed hesitant at first. "I know you, man. This does not make sense," he said during our first conversation after the accusation. But I gotta be honest, people are saying I should cut you off too. To his credit, he resisted that pressure, though I later learned it cost him socially. My family offered confused support. My mother called daily, her voice strained with worry. My father, a man of few words, simply asked, "Is it true?" When I vehemently denied it, he nodded once. Then, "We will get through this." But I caught the momentary hesitation in his eyes, the flicker of doubt that wounded me deeply. Neighbors in my apartment building began whispering when I passed. The elderly woman who had always chatted with me in the elevator now stared fixedly at the numbers above the door. Anonymous notes appeared under my door suggesting I should do everyone a favor and move. My landlord called to discuss concerns raised by other tenants. Social media became a battlefield I quickly abandoned. My accounts flooded with harassment from strangers and acquaintances alike. "We always knew there was something off about you," wrote someone I had considered a friend. Another suggested I'd jump off a bridge and save everyone the trouble. With savings depleted and legal bills mounting, I moved to a tiny studio apartment in a less desirable neighborhood. Using a former coworker's reference, I secured a night shift job at a warehouse using my middle name James to avoid the whispers that now seemed to follow my real name. My identity contracted, becoming defined solely by the accusation. I was no longer Vincent Matthews, promising engineering student and researcher. I was simply the accused. The most painful chapter was the aftermath with Sophia. After that single devastating phone call, she maintained absolute silence. Her parents sent a formal letter through their attorney threatening legal action if I attempted to contact her again. While packing my belongings to move, I found the receipt for the engagement ring I had been saving for a cruel reminder of future plans now shattered. 3 weeks after the accusation, a box appeared at my door containing personal items I had left at Sophia's apartment: a toothbrush, spare clothes, a dog-eared paperback, and the sweatshirt she had always claimed as her own. There was no note, no explanation, just my possessions returned as if to erase any evidence of our connection. 5 months after everything fell apart, I glimpsed Sophia across a street downtown. Our eyes met briefly, before she turned away, quickening her pace. Through Kyle, who still had contact with mutual friends, I learned she had transferred to a university on the West Coast. The dreams were the worst vivid scenes of our past happiness that left me waking in a cold sweat, reaching for someone who was no longer there. 6 months after the accusation, I hit rock bottom. My studio apartment was barely furnished: a mattress on the floor, a folding table, and a single chair. The night shift at the warehouse left me sleeping through daylight hours, my skin pale from lack of Sunday. Meals consisted of whatever was cheapest at the corner store. I had lost 20 pounds, my clothes hanging loosely on my frame. The only routine I maintained was a weekly call with my attorney, who had little progress to report. The police investigation continued, but without physical evidence or witnesses, it seemed to be at a standstill. I existed in limbo, not convicted of any crime, yet punished as if I had been. Then came a chance encounter that nearly broke me. While buying groceries one evening before my shift, I turned a corner and found myself face to face with Amber. She was examining apples, looking carefree and unburdened. When she noticed me, her expression flickered with something like surprise before settling into a smirk. She did not speak, merely held my gaze for a moment before deliberately turning her back. The casual cruelty of that gesture sent me stumbling from the store, groceries forgotten. The following week brought news that should have been positive: the police were dropping their investigation due to insufficient evidence to proceed. My attorney delivered this update with forced enthusiasm, but we both knew it was an empty victory. The university refused to reconsider my expulsion, citing their independent standards of evidence and the need to maintain a safe campus environment. We could consider a defamation suit, my lawyer suggested during our next meeting. But I have to be honest, they are costly, lengthy, and the burden of proof would be on us. Given the current climate around these issues, our chances would be slim. That night I found myself walking across the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset. The sky blazed orange and pink as I paused midway, watching the water below. For a brief dark moment, I considered how simple it would be to end the constant struggle, the isolation, the shame that clung to me despite my innocence. What stopped me was not hope that had long since abandoned me, but a stubborn refusal to let a lie be the final word on my life. 3 days later, everything changed with an unexpected phone call. My phone rarely rang anymore, so the unknown number nearly went unanswered. When I finally picked up, a female voice spoke hesitantly. "Vincent, this is Taylor. I was friends with Sophia at Columbia." The name was vaguely familiar, a girl I had met a few times at campus events. "What do you want?" I asked, warily expecting accusations or threats. "You need to know something about Amber," she said, her voice dropping to near whisper. "Can we meet?" Not over the phone. We arranged to meet the following day at a public park. Taylor arrived wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, glancing nervously around as she sat beside me on a bench. "I should have come forward sooner," she began, hands fidgeting in her lap. "But I was afraid. Everyone turned on you so quickly, and I did not want the same thing to happen to me." She took a deep breath. "3 weeks ago, I was at a party with some mutual friends. Amber was there, already drunk when I arrived. She was bragging, Vincent, bragging about how she had gotten away with it." My heart pounded as Taylor continued. "She admitted she made up the whole thing. She said she had a crush on you for months, got jealous of Sophia, and when you rejected her advance in the kitchen, she decided to get revenge." "Do you have proof?" I asked, hardly daring to hope. Taylor nodded, pulling out her phone. "I recorded part of it. I pretended to be texting because I could not believe what I was hearing." She pressed play, and Amber's slightly slurred voice emerged from the speaker. "I just wanted him to notice me, you know. But he was always so obsessed with Sophia. Perfect Sophia. When he brushed me off in the kitchen, I just thought I can ruin him with one word. And I did. It was so easy." I listened stunned as she detailed how she had fabricated the story, timing it perfectly when I was helping with dishes, knowing we had been briefly alone. The recording ended with Amber laughing, saying, "The best part is no one even questioned it, not even my sister." Taylor's revelation was the first ray of light in months of darkness. With shaking hands, I called my attorney from the park bench, putting the phone on speaker so Taylor could explain what she had witnessed. For the first time since the accusation, I felt something like hope stir within me. The next weeks became a flurry of strategic planning. My lawyer connected me with an attorney who specialized in defamation cases, who agreed to take on my case for a reduced fee given the circumstances. Kyle stepped up in ways I would never forget, reaching out to mutual acquaintances to gather statements about my character and Amber's history of attention-seeking behavior. We hired a private investigator who uncovered a pattern. Amber had made similar accusations against a high school teacher who had given her a failing grade, though she had withdrawn the claim when questioned by police. More damning evidence emerged: text messages Amber had sent to friends before spring break, talking about how she planned to make a move on her sister's boyfriend and create some drama. Most conclusively, social media posts placed Amber at a different location during the time she claimed the assault occurred. She had been posting selfies from a coffee shop across town, timestamps, contradicting her statement to police. We built a comprehensive timeline demonstrating the impossibility of her claims, supplemented by character statements from professors, former employers, and classmates. With each piece of evidence we gathered, my determination grew. This was no longer just about clearing my name. It was about ensuring that Amber faced consequences for the devastation she had caused, and that the institutions that had failed me would be held accountable for their rush to judgment. Armed with our evidence portfolio, my legal team launched a coordinated counteroffensive. We filed formal complaints against the university for violation of due process rights and gender-based discrimination in their handling of the case. My attorney reached out to contacts at a local newspaper, carefully presenting the story of an innocent student whose life was derailed by a demonstrably false accusation. Simultaneously, we submitted a complaint to the Department of Education, detailing how the university's procedures violated federal guidelines for handling sexual misconduct allegations. Cease and desist letters went out to individuals who had continued to spread the false allegations online after the police investigation was dropped. With Taylor's recording and our growing evidence file, I requested a meeting with Dr. Harrison. Sitting across from him in a coffee shop, no longer welcome in his campus office, I watched his expression shift from reluctant courtesy to shock as he reviewed the documents and listened to Amber's recorded confession. "Vincent," he said, finally removing his glasses to rub his eyes, "I do not know what to say. We all just assumed. That is the problem, I replied quietly. Everyone just assumed. The university's response to our legal pressure was swift as the story gained traction. Internal emails leaked to the press revealed administrators discussing the need to make an example of accused students regardless of evidence. A former member of the disciplinary committee came forward with concerns about the handling of multiple cases, including mine. The tide of public opinion began to turn. Former classmates reached out with awkward apologies. Social media accounts that had once been battlegrounds for harassment became platforms for support. Dr. Harrison called to offer my research position back with a raise and extended funding. Most significantly, a certified letter arrived from the university president's office requesting a meeting with me and my legal team to discuss a resolution. Enclosed was a preliminary offer of reinstatement, compensatory damages, and a formal apology contingent upon a non-disclosure agreement. I had no intention of signing. Amber received formal notification of our defamation suit 2 days later. Within hours, her attorney contacted mine to discuss settlement options. They proposed a private apology and monetary compensation in exchange for dropping the suit. I refused, insisting on a meeting where Amber would acknowledge her lies face to face. That meeting took place in a conference room at my attorney's office. Amber arrived with her parents and legal representation looking smaller than I remembered and visibly nervous. When our eyes met, she quickly looked away. I made it up, she admitted, after lengthy legal preliminaries, her voice barely audible. Vincent never touched me. He never did anything wrong. Tears streamed down her face as she continued. It just got out of hand. I was jealous of Sophia. I had a stupid crush, and when he did not notice me, I got angry. I never thought it would go this far. I sat motionless, absorbing the words I had waited months to hear. Her parents looked shocked, her father's face ashen as he gripped the conference table. I had rehearsed what I would say in this moment many times, imagining satisfaction or vindication. Instead, I felt a strange emptiness. "Do you understand what you did to me?" I asked finally, my voice steady. "I lost my education, my career, my relationship, my home, my friends. You took everything from me because of a lie." Amber sobbed, unable to respond. Her mother spoke instead, voice trembling. "We are so sorry, Vincent." We never questioned her story. We should have. The settlement we eventually agreed upon included a substantial monetary payment, a public statement acknowledging the false accusation, and Amber's agreement to undergo psychological counseling. I chose not to press for criminal charges for filing a false police report, not out of forgiveness, but because I wanted to end this chapter of my life. As I walked out of that conference room, I felt a weight lifting that I had carried for so long I had forgotten what it was like to stand straight. The truth had finally emerged, just as I had always believed it would. But the victory felt hollow against the backdrop of everything I had lost. The months that followed brought a series of selective reconciliations as I carefully rebuilt my life. The university issued a formal public apology and offered immediate reinstatement with a full scholarship. I accepted only after negotiating significant policy changes to protect due process rights for accused students and establishing a support fund for those wrongfully accused. Dr. Harrison not only welcomed me back to his research team but championed my work to colleagues who had previously shunned me. Our mentor relationship slowly rebuilt on a foundation of hard-earned mutual respect. "I failed you," he admitted during a late night in the lab. "I will not make that mistake again." Marcus and Jason reached out repeatedly asking to meet for coffee or basketball. I eventually agreed to see them, listening to their apologies with a detachment that surprised me. "We should have known better," Marcus said. "We were friends for years." "Yes," I replied simply. "You should have." Kyle needed no reconciliation. His unwavering support had elevated him from friend to family in my eyes. My parents celebrated the vindication they had always believed would come, though the shadows of doubt I had glimpsed in their eyes lingered in my memory. 9 months after the initial accusation, Sophia contacted me. We arranged to meet at the same coffee shop where we had first connected during that long-ago snowstorm. She looked different, somehow thinner, her eyes, lacking the sparkle I remembered. "I should have believed you," she said immediately, tears forming. I was in shock. And everyone was saying I needed to support my sister, that victims should be believed unconditionally. I got caught up in it all without ever really listening to you. I nodded, surprising myself with how calm I felt. You made your choice. Is there any way? She began, then stopped. Could we ever? No, I said gently but firmly. Some things cannot be repaired, Sophia. The trust is gone. We talked for nearly 2 hours about how we had each changed, about lessons learned at terrible cost. Despite lingering feelings that might never fully disappear, I recognized that we could never go back to who we were before. As we parted, she handed me a small package, the hiking guidebook we had used to plan our trips together. I thought you might want this back, she said, for new adventures. It was a small gesture, but meaningful, acknowledging what had been good between us while accepting its end. I thanked her sincerely, and we parted without bitterness. My fresh start came in the form of a transfer to Stanford, with a prestigious fellowship. The new research position offered greater responsibility and a chance to reclaim my academic trajectory. In California, 3,000 miles from the scene of my darkest days, I found space to breathe and rebuild. I became involved with a support group for falsely accused students, sharing my experience to help others navigate similar nightmares. This advocacy work expanded to include consulting on university policy reforms, addressing due process concerns in campus proceedings. My case was cited in several legal articles examining the balance between supporting accusers and protecting the rights of the accused. The experience fundamentally changed my perspective on justice, truth, and human nature. I learned that institutions designed to protect can cause profound harm when fear of criticism outweighs commitment to fairness. I discovered the fragility of relationships I had thought unbreakable and the surprising strength of others I had taken for granted. The hardest lesson was letting go of bitterness while maintaining appropriate boundaries. I could acknowledge the apologies offered without obligating myself to restore relationships that had proven unreliable under pressure. I could advocate for better systems without being consumed by anger at those that had failed me. Slowly, I began dating again. Sarah, a fellow engineering researcher I met at a conference, approached our relationship with a patience that respected my caution about trusting again. "Take all the time you need," she said, when I explained my hesitancy. "Good things are worth waiting for." Looking back on everything that happened, I realized that some wounds never heal completely, they simply become part of who you are. The scars remain, as reminders of both vulnerability and resilience. I learned that human beings are capable of terrible cruelty born of petty emotions, and that systems meant to deliver justice can perpetuate profound injustice when due process is sacrificed for expedience. Yet I also discovered something about truth: it persists. It waits beneath the surface of lies, eventually finding its way into the light. My vindication did not undo the damage or restore what was lost, but it affirmed something essential about reality itself: that facts matter, that truth exists, independent of narrative or accusation. I no longer define myself by what happened to me. I am not a victim, nor am I merely a survivor. I am a person who faced a profound injustice and emerged with a deeper understanding of both human frailty and strength. The experience is part of me, but it does not encompass me. If there is wisdom to be gained from such an ordeal, perhaps it is this: justice is not guaranteed, but truth endures. Forgiveness is not an event, but a complex journey without a fixed destination. And rebuilding after devastation requires not just resilience, but discernment about which foundations remain trustworthy. Have you ever been falsely accused of something and had to fight to clear your name? How did you handle the people who abandoned you when you needed them most and then tried to come back when the truth came out? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience in the face of injustice. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the only way through darkness is to become your own light.